So for CIOs and CISOs, the idea that software is eating the world isn't new. It's a competitive advantage, especially over the last couple of years. I mean, businesses have used software, how they run it, how they build it, to their advantage to compete, especially now heavily driven to the cloud or cloud-native technologies. How do you describe the need for machine identity management, the need for digital transformation to make it successful to a CIO or CISO? Why is it important?
It's really interesting. I'll kind of lead with an interesting example. I had an interesting briefing with Salesforce, right? The first company to have that cross through the no software, right? They were a SaaS company. And I had this great briefing from their CISO, and he just said, we're known for being like one of the first major SaaS companies, right? Cloud, right? They were like first to market with that. But they said, you know what? We're not an infrastructure company. That's not our core competency. Like many other organizations, they're not infrastructure companies. You've got Amazon, Microsoft, Google, IBM, and others, other cloud service providers, that's their core competency. They have economy of scale with their cloud environments. So Salesforce said, we've built this new project, products, what have you, called Hyperforce, where we can have the Salesforce stack be deployed on any cloud, hybrid multi-cloud, you name it. So I'm bringing that up as an example because even the experts at Salesforce recognize that they don't want to be sitting there building all the infrastructure out when they know that others have done a really good job at it. And to quote Gartner, they said well over 99% of all failures in the cloud are your fault and not necessarily the cloud providers. I'm not saying the cloud providers are perfect, but they really do a good job and they laser focus on that. So the point you're raising, Kevin, to me, if I was a mid-sized organization, maybe I'm a retailer, maybe I'm in entertainment business, or we're here in Las Vegas, maybe I'm in the gaming sector, right? Does it make sense for them to build that infrastructure, right? Probably not. But when they start leveraging this infrastructure, they now have to think about these virtual machines they're going to be creating and all these other things. So because they don't have the appliances and the servers in front of them, they now need to, this to me is another exciting part on that digital transformation path. It accelerates their time to market, but now they need to think about machine identity management as they're deploying all these machines in the cloud, and they're not touching their physical servers anymore. We have to get away from that physical notion.
Right. Because what makes my cloud, or your cloud, or the adversary, it comes down to the machine identity. That allows us to say who it is, what it can do, and that's something that's different with machines. So it sounds like then for a CIO, CISO, we understand that customers, they are the lifeblood of our business. That's where our revenue comes from. The future of the business itself then is actually the machines, the software, the clouds. And just like we have human identities for our customers, then just as important representing the business is the machine identity. We can't have a business without them. Either human identities for customers, team members, and then the machine identities for what runs the business, the software, the cloud.
Exactly. Every business is a digital business. And with that, it means they have artifacts, they have data, they have identities and humans and machines. And where is this being stored, right? Of course, some are still doing on-prem and many are doing hybrid multi-cloud. But the point is that as we digitally transform, we're creating more, to your point. Every second goes by, there's more workloads being created and taken down. The environment is much, much more dynamic. And so we need to understand that and bring these principles into place. And it really starts to get complicated too when you think about the Biden administration looking at post-quantum preparedness, right? Because again, when we talk about credentialing of these machines, and if we're going by way of best practices, cryptography is the way to do it, keys and certificates. And these have traditionally always been very complex to manage for these CIOs and CISOs. So I'm not saying they need to now embark on this. We don't want to slow them down. But at the same time, they need to really start thinking about this because one day quantum computers will be there, and unfortunately, bad actors will likely have access to them. And so are you ready for that? But what would keep me up at night and what I try to recommend is crypto agility. To me, that's what post-quantum means. Because an incident can happen right now at this second. So as you're creating 10,000 new workloads, how do you know that the certificate you issued them doesn't have crypto that just suddenly became vulnerable, right? Or if there's a certificate that's going to expire on a server, do you know that that's...
Right. And that's the opportunity I think we have with machine identity management, which is you can stop the outages, you can automate, and then as well, if you're doing that well, you're going to be prepared for an eventuality, whether that be an incident like a breach or an eventuality which is, hey, we need to replace machine identities because we need to move to new type of crypto because of the post-quantum world.
Exactly. So I think kudos to the Biden administration for at least saying, and I liked how they used preparedness. So it wasn't this big, scary term. It was like, let's just get ready. And if you look at even maturity models that you and I worked on in this space, the first thing is you need to measure before you can manage. Discovery, what's there, right? And you and I both know, even in past engagements, there's some clients I've talked to where they weren't using any machine identity management. They had all their crypto all over the place. They ran a discovery scan and they found 10,000 more keys and certs than they thought they actually had. It's very common. But to your point though, now with these workloads, we're in a different era now with digital transformation. DevOps, all the new use cases, the volume has just increased exponentially, and there's no stop in sight in my view.
Yeah. So I love this. I think where we've come to, which is that for CEOs, CIOs, CISOs, you can even easily explain machine identity management. There are two actors on a network. There are people and there are machines. People, humans, we use usernames, passwords. Machines use different identities, and we generate revenue with our customers. We have team members. We have human identities, and that competitive advantage to the future, the clouds, the software that we're creating, they have identities too.
Yes.
We have to have, just like we have our customer identity strategy, we have the machine identity management strategy.
Absolutely.
For the business.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting. When I was at Gartner, the group I was in, externally, folks would see that I was in the identity and access management group. But internally, we called ourselves secure business enablement. And so to your point, the markets now, it has realized the importance of human identity, right? And you can see with acquisitions of investment firms, Ping Identity and others, right? The identity market's hot because we see that is a big area. Bad actors are going after identities, all that. And we also know it's a barrier to business. There's consumer identity and access management. If you make it too hard for your consumers to get in, they can lose customers, right? And it's a brand new world for banks and other kinds of digital services where people have short attention spans. And if they have to do password resets and all kinds of things, you'll lose them. That's humans. The machine side, you're absolutely right. Machines are the workhorse of the digital world. They're these containers that create all the cool websites and services that we use, whether it's Xbox Live and you're gaming, or you're watching Netflix and Disney Plus. All of that is fueled by those elastic clouds that are using workloads to do that work. That's the workhorse of the new world. But what's under that though, Kevin, the concrete and steel foundation of all of this, both for humans and machines, is cryptography. And we have to recognize that it's not something we can push down in the basement where we have these crypto geeks that are out there. We still have those. I'm one, and I think you're one as well. But it is now attached to a larger business problem. Without doing that properly, you're going to have competitive barriers.
And that's the opportunity we have machine identity management. I think you actually shared this, that it's a business story that I can tell my CEO, my CISO can explain, my board can understand.
Yes.
Why it's important. We've got human identities for customers, for team members. We've got machine identities for what run the business, the cloud, the software. Okay. And that's a story that you can tell. It makes sense. And it's business value, as you said.
Exactly. The machines are, if we were to go back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the machines are those assembly line machines, right? But just software that can exist and not exist. And it's a different world now. Anyone online from Singapore to Australia could potentially come into your network. So unlike those assembly lines,
and our network is anywhere too.
The network
it's
is
the
anywhere,
cloud, it's
right?
the hybrid cloud.
Exactly.
And how do we know what's ours or not? Yeah, it comes down to the machine identity.
Exactly. And so one of the top security trends report that I worked on in 2021 for Gartner, we had identity first security listed in there. Machine identity management was listed in there as a top trend, but we've covered that a little bit here. But identity first security. So as you mentioned, the network is everywhere and anywhere. And so the perimeter now is the identity. But again, I would say very confidently that the market's thinking the human side. And so now we're on the cusp of, we also need that identity perimeter to be for those machines too.
Right, and so that's why machine identity is that foundation of zero trust, because that foundation is who are you, what can you do, what will allow you to do, and that then, yes, for machines, it's the machine identity.
Yes.
And that's, yeah, and I think as we can share that more, both with identity professionals, but also the CIOs and beyond.
The CISOs and
CISOs,
others.
and
Yep.
it just makes loads of sense.
I'll make one quick comment, and just getting into the details. So NIST 800-207, Zero Trust Architecture. I'm a big fan of it. If you haven't read it, I think it's 452 pages, right? But I'll just cut to the chase here a little bit. When you look at the first diagram, they have a control plane in the middle, right? And the control plane is effectively when you're bringing on a new entity, a human or machine, you need to look at all the contextual stuff, the threats, the environment where they're coming in, all of that stuff. And then you can determine whether or not you want to onboard them, let them in, deny them access, all of that stuff. And to the credit of NIST, they have elements that are contextual inputs into it, like threat landscape, SIM, data access policy, ID management, right? But when you look at ID management, their definition there is humans. But you know what else they put there? And they called it out, PKI. PKI is an input. But what I would like to see is them transition it from PKI to machine identity management. Because a machine could use a symmetric key, it could use PKI, and maybe some other kind of zero knowledge proofs or some other type of crypto, right? So it doesn't have to be PKI per se. But I wanted to highlight that, Kevin, because I was very happy to see that NIST included that, but I'd like to see that evolve.
And it's a really good point for professionals because we don't call human identity management, carbon-based life form identity management.
Yes.
Just like, yes, in the past we may have talked about PKI or others, but this is now machine identity management. That's something for the technologists, us, that's our opportunity to move that forward.
Yes.
Still have questions? Turn to Venafi, the machine identity experts. Check out our channel or visit venafi.com to learn about all things encryption, certificate management, and more.